My future sister-in-law is forcing my brother on a lavish wedding with a 100-guest list consisting of her entire family, and only my brother would pay for it. Now my brother is tired of her insanity. My brother and his now fiancée have been dating long distance for a couple of years, with multiple phone and video calls throughout the day every single day. And I know this because he lives with me. I had a few concerns about the relationship, the incessant phone calls being one of them. She tends to call every 20 to 60 minutes, even while both of them are at work, and I always had the impression that she was keeping tabs on him, as I'd often happen to be in the room when he'd receive a call and every conversation would essentially start with her asking where he was, what he was doing and who he was with, despite again having asked him those same questions the last time she called 20 minutes ago. She and her family also hail from a part of the country that is considered dangerous for foreigners, which is relevant as my brother and I are of mixed heritage and look foreign, and some of her relatives have been openly hostile. Also, my brother rarely refers to her by name, and I had no idea what it was until she visited us earlier this year. He almost always refers to her as his girlfriend and, as of the engagement, his fiancée. I also found it weird that he had never considered introducing her to our mother or me before the visit. Given that he decided to marry her, he could have set up a video call for us to chat long distances to get to know her. We know almost nothing about her other than what we have observed or what my brother has told us. Neither she nor our family is well off, leading to the next issue. My brother proposed using a family ring. This was not out of tradition but because he couldn't afford to buy an engagement ring and lacked both the patience and willpower to save/budget his expenses. During the proposal, they sat down to discuss some important details, namely 1, the fact that neither of them has a lot of money and 2, their respective families live in completely different parts of the country. My brother tried to compromise by suggesting a location more or less in the middle of our country so that neither of our families would have to travel ridiculously far. She shot this down rather insistently that it had to, under no circumstances, take place in or around her hometown, meaning none of my brother's family would be able to attend his big day as it would essentially become a destination wedding none of us would be able to afford. He gave in to her demand but got her to reluctantly agree to at least opt for a small, intimate ceremony of no more than 20 people to keep costs down so they could put more savings towards buying a house. Fast forward to months later, and she's become increasingly demanding. While my brother isn't a prize by any means, she has started demanding huge quantities of money from him completely out of the blue for non-vital/non-emergency reasons, such as an alleged distant relative of hers refusing to get a job and her insisting on financing their lazy lifestyle. She has also decided to break her agreement about the small ceremony and she now wants a big lavish wedding with a guest list of at least 100 of her family and friends only. Not a single friend or family member from my brother's side. Given the location, catering, etc. that she wants on top of that, the cost of the wedding is going to balloon to at least $9,000 USD, which might not seem like much, but is a crazy amount in the local currency here, and she demands that my brother pay 70% of it, if not all. When he shoots this down, arguing that he doesn't earn nearly enough to have that kind of money saved up for when she wants the wedding and that wasn't what they'd agreed on, she throws a tantrum and snaps that they might as well not get married at all and just go back to being boyfriend and girlfriend. She refuses to let him be involved in any of the planning. Still, it feels like a tactic to force him to resist her demands. This is normal behavior for her. She does not like to compromise and always must have things her way and her way only. My mother and I doubt whether my brother should still postpone the wedding. My instinct is to have him ask for the ring back as we have concerns that if they do marry she will force him to settle down in her part of the country and isolate him from his family and friends, where who knows what might happen to him. That being said, I'm not always the best at reading these situations. Update. Talking to my brother about the wedding/fiancé has been trickier than anticipated. My first attempt at conversation was shut down very quickly as even asking very neutral questions like how is the wedding planning going? And any mention of the fiancé like how many family members and friends is she planning to invite? Were initially met with a lot of hostility and aggression. The second attempt at conversation was slightly more fruitful, and I learned the following. His fiancé has agreed to back down somewhat, whittling her guest list down to 50. 40 guests will be her family and friends, and 10 spots are reserved for my brother to invite. My brother claims he is no longer expected to pay for it all, but will likely need to cover travel and accommodation for any guests he invites. When I asked him why she wouldn't budge on the location, he stated that any more middle ground locations would be too expensive and that he and his fiancée agreed that once the wedding in her hometown was over, they would travel back to our part of the country and have a separate celebration with our friends and family. He also claims that she's backed down about them being joint ATMs for her family, but I wouldn't count on this lasting for long. If the wedding goes ahead, it will likely be a lifelong point of contention. I also learned that she handles most of the wedding planning but allegedly asks for his input. She also plans to ask the guests she invites to give cash only, as they plan to settle down in our city, and paying to ship. Physical gifts would be expensive and a hassle. I am still slightly skeptical, as she had also previously agreed to a small ceremony but quickly changed her mind about that. Who knows what else she might suddenly change her mind about? My brother seems confident it will all work out but given where some of his other life choices have led him, I can't say I agree. Update 2. While I don't have a whole lot to add, there have been a few new developments that to me seem red flaggier than ever. After agreeing to a 50-guest wedding, less than a week went by before my brother's fiancée suddenly wanted a 100-plus guest wedding consisting of her entire living family tree. Allegedly, her siblings, who are not contributing financially, decided that, since the hotel can accommodate over 100 guests, she should invite over 100 guests. I don't know if this egging on by her family members is true or if she's using her family as an excuse to get her way, but neither scenario is good. I flat out asked my brother if he was sure about going through this, considering his fiancée is constantly flip-flopping and changing her minutes, and they can't seem to reach a compromise with which both of them are happy. She always seems to agree with him one moment only to change her mind moments later immediately. Because if this is a preview of what married life will be like, I can see him losing his patience and temper very quickly. Additionally, my mother is retired but has some property that she rents out, which is her only source of income. My brother and his fiancée have expressed interest in moving into said property, or at least my brother has, and he claims his fiancée is on board with the idea. But Mom and I are very against this because when my brother mentioned his idea to me in private, I asked if he'd be willing to pay the rent, given he's never paid rent or made contributions to the household and continues to mooch off of me. And he seemed surprised and even offended. He expected to live there for free. I berated him for that, given it's our mom's only means of income, so he pissily countered, well, but she had better not expect me to pay much. I told our mom about this interaction. Of course, she is flat out against renting to my brother, as we can already foresee that he might pay a couple of months' rent before his complete inability to budget leaves him incapable of doing so. He will attempt to gaslight her, telling her she is an awful mother for expecting her son to pay her rent, etc., to get out of paying. Why is this relevant? Well, his fiancée is so miserable at work that she wants to stop working altogether after marriage. This is problematic because she earns much more than my brother, and his current salary and the many debts he still has to pay off are not enough to support both of them and the children they're already planning to have. Heck, in this economy, at least 1/4 of his salary would go to rent if they rent cheap. Despite knowing this, she still seems dead set on blowing all of her savings on a pointlessly lavish wedding, which would essentially shame my brother in the eyes of her relatives, as he wouldn't be able to contribute much, if anything, and in her culture, it is expected that the groom pay for 100% of the wedding. She also wants a fancy honeymoon somehow. After spending all of her money, she allegedly plans to become a stay-at-home wife with zero savings and no financial safety net. All of this is just maddening. I honestly wouldn't care all that much if there wasn't a very real danger of this whole fiasco negatively impacting my mother and me in some way because I just know my brother will try to pull something if he does inevitably get screwed over. My mom and I have even suggested they rent a small place and try living together for a while because you can't really know a person until you've actually shared a living space with them for a prolonged period of time. But, apparently, that's a no-go because his fiancé's family is extremely religious, and 2 unmarried people living together would be a sin. Update 2. And in the end, I had nothing to do with it and it was all the fiancé. My brother finally grew a pair and put his foot down when his fiancé kept adding more and more to the wedding, jacking the costs up to the point that my brother would have been forced/bullied into taking out a loan that would have put him into debt for years. Anyway, to no one's surprise, his ex-fiancée is extremely materialistic. She insisted on a huge, lavish destination wedding with a guest list in the hundreds consisting entirely of her family and friends only that she initially said she would pay for herself, but then coerced my brother into agreeing to first pay partially and then entirely. She also initially promised she would continue to work as she earned more and 2, would put them into debt with her extreme wedding, so they'd need the extra income just to survive. But she declared that she would stop working right after the wedding and told my brother, "Your money is going to be my money, not ours." She made it clear it would be hers. She'd also been needling my brother to take my inheritance, as in the house I currently live in that I'll be inheriting. My brother is set to inherit a different house, but does she like this house better? Following an argument about her making the wedding even more expensive than it is and realizing that even with a loan, they'd be setting themselves up for utter failure, my brother told her no. And apparently, she doesn't like to be told that. According to my brother, she would always say something to the effect of, "Well, let's just break up then." Or, "Well, let's just call off the wedding." Whenever she couldn't get her way, and up until this point, my brother would always cave and give in to her demands. So imagine Ms. ex-fiancé's surprise when my brother agreed with her and told her, "Okay, let's cancel the wedding. I think we need to put any thoughts of marriage aside until we know for sure where this relationship is going." She proceeded to block him on everything, for 30 minutes. Then she unblocked him to call and berated him for not calling her to beg for forgiveness. After she blocked him, he could not call her even if he wanted to. Initially, my brother was willing to give her another chance but has completely ended the relationship after several days of missed calls/messages on all possible social media platforms, alternating between apologies, love bombing, and vile insults, begging him to reconsider and take her back to telling him he was never good enough for her and how her family never liked him anyway. She even sent a frickin' cake to our house with non-apology and icing on top. It said something along the lines of, "Sorry, love, let's make up." And the thing is, she didn't even spring for any of the good bakeries. She got one from the budget bakery. She tried calling my mom, who didn't answer, and told her in a message, "I don't know why he won't talk to me. I haven't done anything wrong." My mom only responded to tell her that she saw all of the messages she sent and ignored her after that. This triggered Miss ex-fiancé to go on a tirade on yet another platform. How dare he show her messages to his mother, that it's a violation of her privacy, and that kind of BS. From what I know, she's still messaging him, and while I'm really glad she's no longer going to be my sister, I am concerned that she knows where we live, and I wouldn't put it past her to try something crazy, so I'm looking into getting some cameras installed. In her most recent ramblings, she was demanding that he should have paid her family a dowry. We don't even have dowries in our culture, and if it's going by some of her family's religion, If anyone were to pay a dowry, it would be her. My brother is taking it all remarkably well. He doesn't seem particularly bothered. He seems more cheerful if somewhat annoyed by the constant messages he keeps receiving. Heck, he's making plans for trips with his guy friends and has been talking to me more. So, I honestly don't even think his feelings for her were ever that serious to begin with. Minor edit. The ex-fiancée said she'd give the ring to a coworker planning to travel to our city soon, but we'll see if that happens.